Welcome to Engage with Sketchnoting. Doodle your way to better retention. You will find our presentation link at the bottom of each slide. It is bit.ly/summit sketch. It is case sensitive. That is summit in capitals and sketch in lowercase. You will want to open this presentation as we will be linking out to a variety of different resources throughout the presentation. First, as we get started, we would love to know where you're joining us from. If you click on the map image, it'll take you out to a Jamboard where you can navigate to the different slides to find your continent and just move the dot to let us know where you're joining us from. As you're doing that, we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves. I am Jennifer Underhill. I'm here with Tanya Churchill and Erica Woodard. We all work for Wake County Public School Systems. Tanya and I are digital learning coordinators. We help teachers with the successful integration of technology into their classrooms, and Erica is our wonderful team leader. Some of our learning targets for today, we have a couple of warm-up exercises for you. We want you to understand the what and how of visual note-taking. We will share some supporting research with you, along with how to create a culture of sketchnoting in your classroom, and then we'll wrap up with some resources and digital swag for you. We've also created a back channel where you're welcome to send us questions and comments that you have. Simply click on the image to fill out the form in order to contact us. For our first activity today, we would like you to get out a drawing utensil and whatever writing surface you would like to use. It can be a scrap paper, an envelope, receipt, anything that you can find. And what we're going to do first is create a few scribbles. I'll create some scribbles right along with you. I'm using Jamboard for my digital scribbles. You could do the same if you don't have any paper handy. I even have a teammate, I think, who's going to join us along with scribbles also. There's Tanya's scribbles. Awesome. So now what we're going to do is we are going to turn these scribbles into birds. So at first, when you look at them, you might be like, how am I going to make this into a bird? Sometimes the easiest thing to do is just add a couple legs. And from there, if you have different colors, you can choose those if you would like. We can add a beak. We can give our little guy an eye. And even a wing, if you would like. And there is a bird. You'll notice Tanya even turned her scribble in order to create her bird. So if what you're seeing doesn't create a bird for you, turn it, twist it, look at it from a different angle in order to turn it into a bird. So what we would like you to do once you have finished your scribbles is to pick out one of your favorites and post it to one of two platforms for us. If you'll notice on slide 8, we have a Padlet that is linked for you. You can post your bird here, or on slide 9, we have a pre-created tweet ready to go for you. All you need to do is click on it and then add the image of your favorite scribble bird. Feel free to continue to do that as we continue through this presentation. We can't wait to see what you create with your scribbles.
So when we consider things like we just did, where we make scribbles, we make birds out of our scribbles, and when we consider doodling as an on-ramp to sketchnoting, one of the things to remember is that brain only needs to see a representation of what something is in order to recognize it. This allows us to have a lot of freedom when we sketch. For example, let's look at the next couple of slides. When you see what is circled in yellow on the slide, what do you see? We've had students look at this and we've had teachers look at this. We've been told that it was somebody who had a rough night and didn't get enough sleep. We've been told it looked like someone who had a black eye. We've been told that it was a robot. We've been told all kinds of things. And what's interesting is that different people see different things when they look at it. So now let's look at this next image. Some students and teachers recognized immediately that this was a dog. Some noted that it only had 3 legs, which we didn't even see at first. Someone else said it was a horse. The beauty of these differing recognitions of these shapes is that when a person sketch notes, it's for that person. If you are taking notes for you to be able to recall information later, you are drawing for you. So if you think about students with learning differences, this can be an on-ramp to feel confident with their own work and not feel pressured to do things just like everyone else. Another thing that can be fabulous about sketchnoting is organization. We're constantly encouraging students to stay organized. However, sometimes we go overboard giving them organizational strategies that work for us. Some students may not need our organizational strategies and may have a different sense of organization. So sketchnoting allows for that. One of the things we've learned in our research is that there may be greater comprehension when notes are taken with pen and paper rather than on computer. There are several studies that address note-taking by computer versus note-taking by hand, and we've linked to some of those studies here for you. The other thing to consider about sketchnoting that you have to put in the forefront is process over pretty. It's not about how beautiful your notes look, although some people do create stunning sketch notes. It's about capturing ideas in a way that makes sense in your brain so that you make connections and can remember the information later. For this reason, we recommend that students and teachers use pens, not pencils, so they're capturing ideas and not spending time erasing and going back and trying to make their sketch notes perfect. We also recommend notebooks over loose leaf paper because in a notebook, you can see progress over time, and there's not the possibility of losing pieces of paper.
So Jennifer and Erica did a great job warming us up with doing some little doodling and explaining why sketch notes are invaluable. In this section, I'm going to talk about what are considered the essential ingredients of sketchnoting, the 5 elements that you would most likely use to put thoughts and ideas together on a piece of paper in a visual note-taking method. So what I'd like you to do while I'm describing each of these 5 elements is to practice drawing at least one of each of the elements that I'm going to talk about. You're welcome to design your own or to copy one off the slides as you see them. If you'd like, you can even trace your element a few times to create what we call muscle memory, making it easier to reproduce in an authentic note-taking situation, one of which that we'll present to you later in the session. So here we go. We're going to start with arrows. Okay, so as I'm talking, remember, you're going to be practicing arrows on a writing surface of your choice. So arrows can come in many different shapes and forms. They can be obvious and simple, or they can be artistic and fancy. That's for the author to decide. The idea of an arrow is to connect ideas on your page that may not have been placed in any kind of sequential order. There's no pressure to do that during sketchnoting. During visual note-taking, sometimes those images will get placed on the page in random locations, and arrows are used to make that flow happen, to connect the ideas that might not otherwise seem connected. So it's okay to take your notes first and then make sense of them with arrows later. So hopefully that gave you a chance to get an arrow on your page, or 2 or 3, or trace them. So we're going to move on to containers. Okay, containers really operate like highlighters. Often when we take notes, they'll include a fair amount of written text. We might write complete sentences, make a bullet list of information, write definitions or just keywords. But a container is a way to capture a word or a group, a collection of words together by enclosing them and making them grab your attention like a highlighter would. So just like arrows, it's okay to take those notes first and then use containers later. So our goal now is to have at least one arrow and then put a container on your page too. It can just be a box and can be fancier, or copy one off the page. So people come next. So simple people are a great way to tell a big story in just a few lines. It's not uncommon to get intimidated about drawing people, but when you really break simple people drawings down, you see that they can be created with just mere shapes and lines. And where you bend those lines is where the story gets told. The people on the slide you're looking at now tell stories about different moods, activities, and situations. And there's nothing portrait or landscape-like on this page at all to help with context, just lines and shapes. These are some people from my own journal. I am far from an artist, but I am comfortable drawing stick people to help draw my stories. Just from looking at these lines and the way I've bent them, alongside a small amount of text and a few other little images, you can probably figure out how my people are feeling and what they're doing. And then a few more on the next slide show you that concept as well. Often, if I'm to be honest, my text will come first before I decide how I want my people to look. People are usually the afterthought to enhance the notes that I'm taking. Have fun drawing a simple person. Again, that's usually the one people get stuck with the most. So when we talk about words as a sketchnoting element, we don't mean the text that you might write that would include sentences or definitions. Like, can you imagine writing a complete definition of photosynthesis with the script you see on this page? Words as an element of visual note-taking is more about using words as labels, much like those containers act like highlighters. Special text and fancy writing might also make concepts pop off the page. And it's a bonus if you can decorate your text to look like the concept you're trying to remember. So basically, words could be used in place of containers or to function as a visual label. So I'm inviting you to just pick a word, maybe your name, the street you live on, the model of your dream car, a child's or a pet's name, write it and then decorate it or use a variety of texts. So that's your challenge to get words on the page. And then the last of the 5 elements is the simple lines. I spoke a little bit about simple lines when I described my simple people, and the same can also go for settings and objects as well. The idea here is to see the objects in your environment as a compilation of shapes and simple lines. These simple lines, when put together just right, can tell so much in very little time. Jennifer's about to detail lines and shapes a bit more, but for now, take a look at the collection of lines under the yellow arrow. There's no words to tell you that this is a human engaged in some kind of activity. The activity and its location is up for interpretation, but that's the true nature of sketchnoting. It's up to you to form the meaning. You're the one that has to understand what it means. So it's okay if somebody doesn't interpret it the same way as you. So now we hope that you have at least on your page 1 arrow, 1 container, a simple person, a uniquely written word, and some simple lines on your page. And we're going to encourage you to use these elements as we move forward with this session. And I'm going to give it to Jennifer, and she's going to talk more about those lines and shapes.
So keeping in mind about the process over pretty that Erica mentioned to you, you can draw just about anything with just a few simple shapes. And this is where the visual alphabet comes in. The visual alphabet is made up of simple shapes that you've likely known since childhood. With just a few of these items, you can create just about anything. You'll notice on the right-hand side where we have a coffee mug that we've already shown you what was used to create it with the rectangle, the arc, and just a little squiggle. So by looking at the pizza now, just think about what aspects of the visual alphabet were used to create it. You may notice the triangle, ovals, and a couple of arcs. That's all it took to make the pizza. Below that, we have the camera. Thinking about what was used to create the camera, it's multiple sized rectangles and an oval. So as we continue on, maybe take a moment, look around your location, and see if there's something you can draw using just the visual alphabet, and maybe add it to the sketchnoting that you were creating with the 5 elements that Tanya just shared with you.
Now that Tanya and Jennifer have shared about the 5 elements and about the simple shapes and lines that we can use to sketchnote, you're probably starting to delve into this and think, hey, I can do this. As you continue to delve into the world of sketchnoting, there are a couple of tools online that we want to point out that can help build confidence with drawing. We hear a lot of adults and many students say, I'm not an artist. We are hoping that these 2 tools can help change that. The first Google AI experiment tool we'd like to share is called AutoDraw. It can be found by going to autodraw.com in a browser. The first time you visit AutoDraw, you can choose the fast how-to, or you can jump right in and start drawing. If you jump right in and start drawing and decide later you want to see the how-to, you can always go to the menu in the upper left-hand corner and go back to the how-to. The cool thing about auto draw is that you can just start drawing something on your screen. Now, on my screen, that's a little easier because I have a touchscreen laptop. And I'm going to kind of draw what I think looks like a guitar. Now, it might see it as a violin, it might see it as a guitar, but you can start drawing something and the AI will attempt to recognize it and give you a line drawing of what it perceives that you're attempting to draw. So if you look up across the top of the screen, you'll see that it gave me lots of options of violins and guitars, and I was trying to draw an acoustic guitar. Now, if I choose the acoustic guitar at the top of my screen, it's going to turn my drawing into that. Now, this can be helpful for multiple purposes, including drawing practice, developing muscle memory to speed up the visual note-taking process, as well as building confidence in sketchnoting abilities with AutoDraw's auto-generated line drawing suggestions. Note that this AutoDraw canvas can also be downloaded in the same menu in the upper left-hand corner. I can choose download, and it is going to automatically give me a PNG file with a white background. So that is why we think AutoDraw is a good practice tool to get used to sketchnoting. The other Google AI experiment tool we'd like to introduce is Quick Draw. Quick Draw was written with the intent of creating a large doodling data set to teach the AI to recognize images as people draw them. We are proposing that you use Quick Draw to help you practice sketching. Once you start in Quick Draw, you are given 20 seconds to draw a given object in a way that the AI can recognize it. This practice can help you and your students sketch more efficiently and certainly reinforces the concept of process over pretty. So let's give it a shot. We're going to click Draw, and it's going to give me 20 seconds once I click Got It to draw a raccoon. Now, I do have the advantage that I have a touchscreen laptop and a stylus, so let's see if I can handle a raccoon.
Or hurricane. Or blackberry. Or blueberry.
A
Oh, I
raccoon?
know. It's raccoon.
Woo, it got it. A golf club.
I see circle. Oh, I know. It's golf club.
A mermaid? Ooh, a mermaid. Let's get the mermaid's
elbow.
tail down here.
Or hexagon.
Oh boy. Oh,
Or
this is
spoon.
going to be fun.
Or snake. Or toilet.
I am so going to fail
I
on
see
this one.
seahorse. Or stick. Or dragon.
Yeah, I just gave up on that one. A cello. Okay, let's
I
see
see
if I
pear.
can draw a
Or
cello.
peanut. Oh, I know. It's cello.
Whoa, okay. How about an owl?
I see
Ooh.
moon. Or avocado. Or tooth.
I don't know if I know how to draw an owl.
Or raccoon.
I don't think I know how to draw an owl. So I'm just going to speed that up. Sun.
I see circle. Oh, I know.
I can draw
It's
the
sun.
sun. So after I'm done, I can go back and I can see it says, well drawn, figured out 4 of your doodles, but what about the other 2? So I'm confused about mermaid. I didn't have a clue how to draw that. So I can look and see the AI thought it closest match was a seahorse, a toilet, or a snake. But I can scroll down and see how other people drew mermaids. Oh my goodness. Look at these sketches. I could have done that. That's a cute mermaid. That's a great stick figure mermaid. So I can get some ideas, and you and your students could get some ideas from right here of how you might sketch that. And then I can go back and let me look at an owl. How in the world? I just completely blanked at what an owl even looked like when it told me to draw one. And that's okay. This is practice. It's a game. It's just for fun. But look at all the different ways that people sketched owl. And so now I know. And when you're drawing, if you want to start over, there is an eraser in the top right-hand corner. I almost used it, but I decided not to. I probably should have for mermaid. So that is Quick Draw. That's how Quick Draw works. And, it's kind of addicting. So if you want to do it again, you can do it again. And we're pretty sure that you can have fun with it. And over time, you will notice improvement in your skill level when sketching. So have fun with Quick Draw. we'd like to give you a chance to start practicing based on the content in this presentation. So we're going to have a little video here for you. And what we want you to do is while the video is playing, we're going to ask you to practice sketchnoting. On the slide, we've pointed out some key vocabulary: elements, atoms, compounds, and mixtures. So while you are note-taking during this video, make sure that you make meaning of those 4 words from the context in the video and add those 4 words to your sketch note.
Would you believe me if I told you that everything in the universe, from this pumpkin to a popsicle, is made from just 118 different ingredients? No, I'm serious, it's true. Everything, living and non-living, in the entire universe is made from some combination of the 118 elements on this chart right here, called the periodic table of elements. Here we have oxygen and hydrogen, carbon and nitrogen. All of these ingredients are called elements. Now you may have heard this word before, element, but what does it mean? And what are compounds and mixtures? Well, I have an easy way to help you understand it. And we use Legos. So we have all of these different Lego bricks, and we'll pretend that each Lego brick is an individual atom, okay? Just like how Lego bricks are the building blocks for awesome Lego creations, these atoms are the building blocks for everything in the universe.
No way!
Seriously.
Oh, wow!
And notice how there's all of these different colors as well. We'll pretend that each color is an individual element or ingredient. We have elements you may have heard of, like hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, or carbon. And we even have some elements you may not have heard of, like sodium or chlorine. So today we're just going to focus on 4 of these elements. Now, if we take 2 atoms of hydrogen, so we're going to go 1, 2, okay? And now we're going to take 1 atom of oxygen. And if we chemically combine the 2, meaning we snap them together like this, we form an entirely new substance called a compound. And this compound is called H2O. 2 hydrogens, 1 oxygen, also known as water. All right, let's make another one. All right, so this time we'll take chlorine, a gas, and sodium, a metal, okay? And we will chemically combine them like this. And now we have an entirely new substance, a compound called sodium chloride, or salt. So now we have 2 compounds, water and salt. What happens if we physically combine the 2 by putting them in a container, but don't snap them together? Well, we form a new substance. We form a mixture, and this mixture is salt water.
Ooh, I smell the ocean.
So when 2 or more elements or compounds are physically combined, that means they form a mixture. Now in Lego language, this is when 2 atoms, okay, or compounds are near each other, but aren't snapped together. Remember, because being snapped together means it forms a compound. And when they're near each other, we'll call that a mixture.
Review time.
So to review, I've created a worksheet so you or your students can try this on your own. All you have to do is click the link below to download the worksheet, and you can begin building your own compounds and mixtures with Legos. Oh, and by the way, you don't need to use Legos. You can use Connects or magnet tiles or whatever other colorful building blocks that you have access to. I better take this. Remember, be curious and ask questions. Yep. Okay. Quick. Awesome. Thanks. All right, bye.
Hopefully that was fun for you and you had some success and you were able to apply some of those 5 elements that we talked about in the visual lines and shapes that Jennifer had touched on as well. And now that you're warmed up to the hows of sketchnoting, we're going to give you an opportunity to move ahead to talk about or to hear about the whys. And we're going to start with 2 stories with very different endings. One is about a student named Brody, and he's not a student that I have had. This is a story that I came across in some of my research with sketchnoting. And the other story is about Dalton, who had a very different ending, and he was a student of mine. So we'll start with Brody's story. So when Brody was in elementary school, he loved to draw and he was really good at it. The elementary years were really good for Brody, but he started to struggle in middle school. In 8th grade, he was actually diagnosed with dysgraphia. And Brody's parents had heard that one of his elementary school teachers had been experimenting with visual note-taking and then reached out to that teacher to learn more about what this visual note-taking was. Brody's mom had shared that he'd done well academically in elementary school, but he struggled in middle school when the amount of information he was expected to retain exploded and he couldn't keep up. He struggled with taking notes and studying and memorizing the content. He had no problem understanding the complex concepts and ideas, but then translating them back onto a page in written form was really difficult for him. And because of this, conventional note-taking methods weren't working for him. The conversation with Brody's elementary school teacher resulted in the parent advocating for visual notes to be allowed in class for him during high school. And the teacher had asked Brody how it was going, and he quickly responded. This is when Brody was in 10th grade. He said, well, it definitely helped me pass chemistry. So that elementary school teacher moved on to presenting to schools and school districts and asked Brody to create a sketch note for her that she could use during her presentations that would represent what it was like to be a learner with dysgraphia. And the visual you see on the screen here is Brody's sketch note. So I came across that story and it really made me think of a student that I had had, and his name was Dalton. And he was a boy I taught, well, 6 years ago was the last time I saw him, but he had taken my elective classes for years prior to that. At this time, I was a science specialist. And Dalton's story is highly layered, but I'm just going to give you the Cliff Notes version here. It would be accurate to say that Dalton was a challenging student for most to teach, but in the years that he took my electives, I didn't struggle very much with him. He surely liked to draw and he was really good at it. And I could tell that it kept him focused, or at least when he wasn't focused, drawing would help him refocus so that he could learn. So I just let him draw. And since drawing is a really important part of science, I had an idea for him that would capitalize on his strength and would provide me with authentic work samples that I could use in my classes. So I asked him to draw whatever he was learning in his homeroom science classes and then bring me the drawings so that I could use them as samples in my electives. He told me he could not do that because he would get in trouble. But, I assured him that I would take care of it. I talked to his teacher and explained to the teacher, what I needed, why he was doing it. And I did that. I reached out to the teacher. And what I got in return was an email from his case manager saying that his behavior intervention plan stated that explicitly that he was not allowed to draw in classes or there would be consequences. And at that part, my heart sank. And to this day, I remain deeply impacted by this. So the picture on the slide here is one that Dalton gave me all those years ago. He was drawing it during one of my science classes. And as you can see, it's not exactly science related, but it was helping him focus. After class, he crumbled it up so there wouldn't be any evidence that he was drawing during a class, and he threw it in the trash can. I called him back and I told him how much I admired his work and asked him if I could just have the drawing. So he took it out of the trash can, and you can see the crumbled up marks on the paper. And he did what I had taught him to do in science class. You label your work, and he labeled it crumbled paper, and he gave it to me. This has inspired me to advocate for sketchnoting or visual note-taking, not only for students like Dalton and Brody, but as a choice for all types of learners, since there is so much research to support why it is so valuable in educational settings. And Jennifer is going to talk to you more about some of that research.
Now, you might be thinking we shared the process with you, we shared a couple stories with you, but you might be wondering, is there any actual research to support and back up sketchnoting? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. Researchers have discovered that 50% of the brain is dedicated to vision. 2/3 of the information transmitted to the brain is visual, and 1 million fibers carry messages from our retina to the brain versus 30,000 of the auditory nerve. What this means is that we create more meaning or understanding when we see things, not just hear them. We just spoke about visuals, but that data was primarily about seeing text. What we're going to address here is images and how that they help create meaning even more than text when it's in images. Because images are processed 60,000 times faster than text. And when touch is combined with that vision, our learning actually jumps 30%. And when a student combines learning modalities, there's a 21% increase in retention. In a nutshell, what that research means is when you combine audio, visual, and kinetic, as sketchnoting does, retention is going to increase. Does this look familiar to you or remind you of how maybe you took notes in school? There's highlighting, sticky notes, writing in the margin. This is a type of sketchnoting that maybe you used in high school to help you recall the information. So Mike Rohde said that when your mind and body are working in tandem, that there's little room left for distractions. What that means is when students are sketchnoting, that they're better able to create a concentration force field. This allows them to tune out the distractions around them and focus on learning and understanding.
Some additional research that we've run across is about dual coding theory. This theory is around 50 years old, and it basically is based on an assumption that part of the brain processes verbal and another part of the brain processes visual. So if you can use verbal and visual at the same time, you're going to make connections in the brain that will hopefully increase retention. We also included, you'll notice on this slide that there is a little YouTube symbol at the bottom. So on slide 38, there is a video attached that you can go back and watch later that breaks down the concept of dual coding theory. One of the other considerations with sketchnoting is that you have to create a culture for this type of creative approach. If a culture does not already exist in your school, then you have to create it. And one proven way to help students adopt a new behavior is to model it. So when you're participating in visual note-taking right alongside your students and they see you doing it, they are going to be more likely to do it. Another thing you could do is create a sketch note legend in your classroom. We've displayed an example of what this might look like. And I use a lot of these when I sketch note. I put glasses beside something I really need to look into. When I have an idea, I put a light bulb. If there's something I'm confused about, I like to use question marks and put question marks around it. It's also a great idea to be transparent with your students and really talk through when to sketch note. When you hear words like in summary or a change in tone, maybe a teacher pauses to allow you to paraphrase. These are all great times to sketch. And what we're hoping is that if you're able to teach students to sketch note, then that translates to other teachers' classrooms, and you can share these sorts of strategies with them so that they can retain vocabulary. They can look at different gestures. They can think about tone when another teacher's speaking. You can also be transparent about what to sketch. That's helpful for students. So say you're in a history class and you are talking about a person's name or maybe an author in English, or an art class, an artist. Go ahead and draw your stick figure person to annotate, this is the person we were talking about. Or if there's a list of bullet points, maybe, we do a great job of that on the computer. We're constantly doing things in bullet points, but we don't often think to do that when we're writing and drawing. So teaching students to go ahead and make bullet points when they're sketchnoting could be extremely helpful to keep up with a list of items. Or when there's numbers, draw them out. Or if there's a date or some timelines or something that catches your attention, you could put it in order that way. And you'll notice it's lines and the simple containers that we talked about early in the presentation. So what this does is this gives concrete ways for students to think about and how to trigger their memory in certain moments and at certain key points. So that's something you want to be very intentional about in your classroom.
This is a quote from Albert Einstein. Drawing is not art, drawing is thinking. If I can't picture it, I can't understand it. This is what we're trying to create for students with sketchnoting it, allowing them to have images that help them create understanding. So what we would like you to do now is for you to share your sketchnoting with us on either Padlet, or we have another pre-filled tweet for you. If you're not comfortable sharing your sketch notes that you've created from the 5 elements and the video that we watched, and maybe even some of the other information that we shared with you, you could create a 6-word story instead if you're not quite at that stage of wanting to actually put your sketch notes out there for others to see right now. And either one of those, the 6-word story or your sketchnote, can be shared on our Padlet or through the text. For those of you who are not familiar with a 6-word story, that is when you would create a concise statement consisting of 6 words where you're going to express your feelings, thoughts, or what you learned today about sketchnoting. Feel free to continue submitting your 6-word story or sketch notes as we get ready to wrap up our presentation. What we would like to share with you next is our website of resources. On this resource, you will find an educator page and a student page. On the educator page, we've given you a variety of books to read, people to follow on Twitter, videos to check out, along with podcasts and even research articles. A little something for whatever your learning preference is. On our student resource collection, if you were to click on the top link, you will see a sketchnote gallery that contains a wonderful collection of student sketch notes. You can also share the auto draw and quick draw with your students that Erica demonstrated for us. And we have also included videos for your students to watch.
So as we get ready to end, we want to leave you with a few things, and one being a lesson plan. So this lesson plan would be something that you would use with your students to introduce the idea of sketchnoting or visual note taking to your class. It could be used in conjunction with bell ringer activities. These would be just short warm-up exercises to get your students comfortable with doodling. And the lesson plan in its entirety might last 45 to 60 minutes, but it's also broken up into 6 smaller sections that you could do as shorter individual lessons. Throughout that lesson, you'll recognize several slides that you've seen in this presentation, and it includes an entire slide deck to be included or to be shared with your students as well. And the corresponding slide numbers are indicated throughout the lesson plan for your ease of use. So on this slide, you'll find our digital swag, and the resources are here for you to use and enjoy if you so desire. You'll see a digital badge to call your own, and there are also a set of 18 bookmarks, each with its own quick bell ringer or warm-up activity, a bookmark for your own reading, and ready-made digital Twitter banners that you can use on your own Twitter page. So enjoy those as your digital swag to take with you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Tanya, Jennifer, and I were thrilled to be able to participate in the Wonder Workshop International STEAM Summit. If you'd like to reach out to us, we've left our Twitter contact information with you, as well as a link to a form on this slide where you can get in touch with us. Again, thank you for joining us. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks
Thanks.
for coming.